So, what if the whole American experiment wasn't just about, abstract ideas of liberty, but about the very basics of survival? We're going to dig into a really powerful argument today, one that draws a direct line from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution right to your dinner table, your light switch, and the water coming out of your tap. All right, so the source material we're looking at kicks things off with this incredible metaphor. The idea is that some things, they're not just nice to haves, not just ornaments on life. No, they're the actual fundamental scaffolding that holds our lives together. So, what are we talking about here? What are these essentials? Well, first up, the most basic one of all, food. And we're not talking about it as just some commodity, but as the literal fuel for our existence, our daily bread. Then, of course, you've got clean water. It's totally non-negotiable, right? The absolute foundation for health. And add to that heat, the energy we need to stay warm, to cook our meals, really just to survive when nature gets rough. And finally, light. The power to see, to read, to work, to just be part of society after dark. So you've got these four things: food, water, heat, and light. According to this argument, that is the scaffolding of life. Okay, so how does this all connect back to government? Well, the argument here is that America's founding wasn't some kind of love affair with paperwork and bureaucracy. It was a vow, a promise to protect the very conditions for life.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it connects our two founding documents in a powerful way. So you have the Declaration of Independence, that's the big promise, right? The unalienable right to life. It comes before government. Then you get the Constitution, and what does it do? It provides the mechanism, the how-to, with a direct command to promote the general welfare. The idea is that together, they create this kind of pact, a duty to protect not just words on a page, but actual living people.
And this is such a crucial point. An unalienable right isn't a gift from the government. It's something you're born with, and the government is created specifically to protect it. You can't sell it, you can't trade it. So if life itself is unalienable, well, the argument goes that the things you need to sustain that life can't just be conditional on whether you can pay for them. Which, of course, brings us to the central critique in this whole argument. What happens when our modern systems start treating that scaffolding of life like it's just another product on a supermarket shelf? Man, this quote really just nails the central contradiction, doesn't it? If your right to life is something you're born with, how can the things you need to stay alive, food, water, power, be sold back to you at retail price? The source we're looking at says this is a huge philosophical mistake in how we've set up our society. And you can see this mistake in action most clearly when politics just breaks down. You get a political stalemate, a government shutdown, and all of a sudden things like food assistance become bargaining chips. Payments get halted, and for millions of people, survival itself is suddenly on the line. That's when the abstract idea of policy gets very, very real. So the point here is that this isn't just a simple policy failure. It's not just a political squabble. It's framed as a deep, fundamental misunderstanding of what government is even for. When survival can be bartered away in a negotiation, the government has basically forgotten its original job. Okay, so what's the solution then? Well, the source suggests we need to bring back an old idea and apply it to our modern world, the concept of the commons. So what are the commons? Basically, they're the shared resources that a community holds in trust for everybody, simply because they're essential for life and liberty. It's this powerful idea of collective responsibility, It's us recognizing that some things are just way too important to be left to the ups and downs of the market. And of course, this idea has evolved over time. Back in the day, the commons were things like shared fields, streams, forests. But today, the argument is that the modern commons are the huge man-made networks we all rely on. We're talking about the power grid, the pipes that bring us water, the supply chains for our food. They're basically the arteries of modern life. And here is the warning that comes with that. To allow these modern commons to be completely fenced off, privatized, and controlled for profit? Well, from this perspective, that's like putting a fence around the old village well and then charging people for every single drop of water. It takes a shared lifeline and turns it into a tool of control. Now look, this idea of public responsibility for essential stuff, it isn't new or some radical concept. The source points to huge American projects that have already done this. Think of the Tennessee Valley Authority, which brought power to millions, or the Rural Electrification Act, which literally lit up the countryside where private companies wouldn't bother to go.
These are held up as historical proof that this model can and does work.
So this all brings us to the final part of the argument, to the ultimate measure it proposes for what makes a government legitimate in the first place. The entire analysis really boils down to this one question. It's not about GDP or the size of the military or how perfectly the laws are written. What's the real measure of power?
And the answer presented is incredibly simple and direct. It's whether a body politic can keep an actual human body alive. A government that can't make sure its people have food and water and heat? Well, according to this argument, that government has failed its most fundamental test.
So the call to action is just as direct. Reorder things around the right to live. Make the means of life non-negotiable. The idea is to build systems, like public utilities that sell power at cost, that guarantee no political gridlock or corporate bottom line can ever cut someone off from the very things they need to survive. At the end of the day, it all comes down to this one powerful principle. The first freedom has to be the freedom to keep living. I mean, before you can have freedom of speech or pursue happiness, you first have to have the freedom to just exist. And so, we're going to end right back where we started, with the core question driving this entire argument. Is life the ultimate measure? Should the success of a country be judged, first and foremost, by its simple ability to keep its people alive? It's a big question, and definitely something to think about.